You brought up the industry of worship music
Hmm.
earlier in our conversation, and I often think like, I wonder if people felt like they lost some of their soul, or the movement lost its soul, and so then they felt like they were going to lose its soul just within the industrialization of it, with the monetization of
Mm.
worship. Because I remember I was a young adult who was at a point in my life where I was deciding to actually be an active Christian, and this is the direction I was going to go in life, and
Hmm.
that worship movement was a big part of it.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
you know,
I totally felt that.
yeah. Travis, it's really good to have you here.
Thanks.
Welcome to the show today. Travis Thuro, good friends from church, and that would be fun to have a off the cuff conversation.
I have no idea what we're about to talk about. So
Well,
it's going to be a surprise to me.
that puts you in an awkward position.
Speaking of surprises, did your mustache become kind of a surprise to you? Because I'm looking at a picture over here where you don't have one,
Right.
and
Well, I saw it growing.
I feel like it just kind of like, pardon the pun, but it just kind of grew on you,
It just
and now it's like it's very much your thing.
well, you have facial hair, so you realize that it comes in quite slowly.
Yes, it does.
So, I mean, in that regard, no, I saw it coming. My dad always had a mustache when I was a kid, and that was always like the dad thing.
I remember when I was young, I wanted to grow facial hair so bad. And I think I was like 15 and I couldn't really grow anything in my mustache or my chin, but I could grow sideburns, or at least like a little bit, It's 15, 16. And so I had like the full on lamb chops. I felt pretty cool.
That was the 90s.
Yeah, that would have been the 90s.
And just for some context, you grew up in Southern California.
I did. Yeah. I grew up pretty close to Disneyland, south of Disneyland, Orange County.
You kind of grew up in like an iconic kind of area, right? In terms of like surf culture, and like specifically, wanted to talk today about worship music, and you kind of, that area was known for like the Jesus People movement, right?
Yeah.
And the Vineyard worship movement, John Wimber, all of that, and you're kind of in the middle of all that, and rubbing shoulders, schmoozing.
I don't think I knew it at the time.
No.
Like looking back, I realized, that was a special time.
Mm-hmm.
It's actually become like a time that I think a lot of people look back now with nostalgia. I did grow up adjacent to a lot of that stuff. I probably just took it for granted.
Yeah.
And
did you ever get to know Keith Green?
No,
no,
he
kind of look like.
Though I do have a bit of a Keith Green. Well, I have a few Keith Green stories, but I was very influenced by Keith Green as a kid through some records that I had discovered. From my mom, and also, actually, to be specific, the Keith Green record that I got wasn't my mom's. It came from some other church lady that I had somehow picked up this record, and I didn't know he was dead. So I'd been listening to this and I was like, this is great music. I was totally getting into it. And then someone told me that he died in a plane crash. And I remember just being crushed. I was like, no, and it happened like 15 years earlier or whatever. But yeah, that was a big loss for Christian music, and kind of an era that really had come to an end. Christian music in the 80s and 90s was different, but worship wasn't really an industry like it is now.
That's the big thing.
Yeah.
And I'd like for our conversation to go there today.
Yeah.
You're a worship leader. You've been involved in worship music, and you're a great gifted musician. You backed out of that world for a while. And recently, you've kind of made your way back into serving in that way in a church setting. But yeah, like why did you step away? Like how long? Tell us a bit. Like how long were you involved in like leading worship and stuff, and then why did you kind of get out of that?
Yeah, so I started like getting into music probably around age 12 or 13. I took some lessons at the local community college. Back then, lessons were classes were super cheap. I think it was like $15 a credit or something, like ridiculously low. And so I was taking night classes at the community college, learning the piano, music theory,
Yeah.
and it was really formational for me. I was super into it. And I started attending a vineyard church in Mission Viejo in 1995. It was Halloween. It was like the Harvest Crusade, or not Crusade, Harvest Festival, I think they called it. And it was basically like the Christian alternative or the church's alternative to trick or treating. And so my mom dropped me off at this vineyard church and I got plugged in. It was a really, really formational, good time for me, where I really needed that group. I really needed that family. Um, and so I probably started strumming a guitar and learning some chords. Looking back then, it was all just like sheets that someone had in like a 3-ring binder. There was no internet that people were really using. I mean, it existed apparently. Al Gore was probably feverishly working on it somewhere, right? But the internet wasn't really a thing for me anyway.
Yeah, no, me either.
And so it was all just sheet music and it would just get passed around. And so I was learning songs by all these mostly vineyard artists because it was a vineyard church.
Who were some of the artists that you were doing?
So a lot of people that I later got to know. So I was probably singing stuff from Brian Dirksen and Andy Park and David Roos and I mean Danny Daniels and Eddie Espinoza and some of the really OG vineyard guys.
Yeah.
And I remember thinking that songwriting was kind of normal and that's just what churches did. Like everyone, there's so many new songs all the time. And they were all written by people who were either in the church I was going to or friends of those people or churches nearby. And so it just seemed like, yeah, this is just what happens.
Yeah.
Later on, I realized like that was a kind of a hot spot for new songs and also just a particular era or time where people were just writing that stuff maybe more than they had been in the past. So songwriting was like it was a big value, and then I started thinking, oh, I want to start writing songs, and so I would say maybe around age 15, I started, maybe 14, 15, I started writing my own stuff.
Yeah.
And it was just, that was the culture. That's what I had seen modeled and I wanted to do it myself. So the vineyard had like a few hot spots, I guess you could say. One of them would be Ground Zero in Southern California. And then the other one would have been Toronto.
Yeah, the airport.
Yeah,
vineyard
and
church
that's
of
a
notoriety.
lot of people
fame.
have a lot of opinions about that one.
Yeah.
And then the other hot spot would have been Langley, at least for North America, right?
Yeah.
England is kind of its own thing too.
Gotcha. Yeah.
So when we first moved to Abbotsford, it was 2005. We started going to the Abbotsford Vineyard, and I just wanted to get plugged in. We showed up like just at a time where some major change was about to occur. There was a church split, so we went to another church that was kind of the offshoot of the Abbotsford Vineyard there. And a lot of people have some pretty negative things to say about that. From our perspective, it was awesome in the first few years. We had a great time. It was a kind of like a culture of yes, where it's just like, oh, you want to start that ministry? Go for it. You want to get involved? Yes, be involved. And I grew a lot as a Christian, as a musician, as just a person who serves in church, and it was a pretty good culture to be a part of. And it also ended really terribly. And so then we stayed there for a few years. We ended up going back to the Abbotsford Vineyard, started getting more involved. And then COVID happened and everyone reevaluated everything. And it was tough. I mean, leading worship in front of like a cell phone filming me, like we didn't have all the tech dialed in. We were not prepared at all for like an online service. And we shrunk. We were quite a small church at that point. And at that point, I was just kind of like, I don't really want to make this my main thing. I don't want to
Worship music, you mean?
Yeah,
Or
I worship music
okay,
specifically.
yeah.
Like as far as music is concerned,
Mhm.
and Christian music, even just music
Yeah,
toward God, vertical music,
yeah,
I love that. And
yeah.
I've been a part of that the whole time. But as far as like the worship music scene, I don't know if that's the right word, but I just wasn't feeling it.
And so did something seem off? Like what felt off to you?
I think I probably just needed a break.
Okay,
I was
yeah,
tired,
yeah.
and I don't think I was ever burnt out, which I'm grateful for because I have some friends who really um, gave 100%
Mm,
or more to the church, and some of them still haven't recovered from that.
mm,
Um, so I think I probably got out just in time. And then we started feeling like I kind of want to go to a church again. We ended up here on a barbecue
mm,
Sunday. And we really liked it. Our daughter had come to this youth group and was loving it for quite a while. And we thought, hey, let's check it out. Maybe we'll like it too.
yeah,
And we did.
yeah, yeah. You were talking about how like some people along the way of your journey have never recovered from just the burnout or the maybe some of the negative pieces of being a part of the environment they're in. And it got me thinking about how many sort of like worship uh what do you want to call them, like celebrities or
Yeah.
well-known faces in the worship world have kind of like deconstructed and have kind of like left stuff behind. There's like Marty Sampson from Hillsong,
Hmm.
um not Adrian, anyway,
Audrey?
Audrey Assad,
Yeah.
um Kevin Max from DC Talk,
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
yeah, Michael Gungor
Yep.
from Gungor. There's just a lot of well-known people from the Christian
Mm-hmm.
music industry who've kind of like left and kind of publicly left, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know, sometimes I think about like you brought up the industry of worship music
Mm-hmm.
earlier in our conversation, and I often think like I wonder if people felt like they lost some of their soul, or the movement lost its soul, and so then they felt like they were going to lose its soul just with the industrialization of it, with the monetization of
Mm.
worship. Because I remember I was a young adult who was at a point in my life where I was deciding to actually be an active Christian, and this is the direction I was going to go in life, and
Mm-hmm.
that worship movement was a big part of it.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
you know,
I totally felt that.
yeah, I think for young
It's
adults
all I
and
wanted to do.
teenagers in
Yeah.
that period, it was like worship, the music was a huge piece of, and that's often in youth culture movements, right?
Yeah.
That's common. But like, yeah, like so Delirious,
Loved them.
and they were
Yeah.
huge. And then the British invasion of like,
Yeah.
Matt
It was
Redman
like,
and
yeah, it was like the Beatles, but for
yeah,
Christian
it
music.
felt like
Yeah.
every worship event in Canada was like a headline of British people like
Yeah.
Martin Smith and Delirious and Matt Redman, Tim Hughes and Mike Pilavachi.
Yeah.
But it was such a big piece of my like formation.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And I went to Bible college and worship leading, and it was so big. And I've like over the years been like, am I just getting old and like crusty, or does it feel like something's being lost along the way that for us in that era, that time was really pure and really like just good. And now it's like worship music has become its own genre.
Mm-hmm.
I think people discovered that worship music really sells, and so you like Michael W. Smith had a worship album that was really big,
Mm-hmm.
and to me that was the first big worship album that a just like a CCM artist put out,
Yeah.
and it was
I
huge.
actually really like that album.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
still stands up. It's a really good one. But yeah, I muse and wonder about the monetization and the industrialization of the worship kind of thing, and
Well,
how
first,
many
I don't
people.
blame the celebrities.
Yeah,
I blame the people because they're turning them into celebrities. A lot of these guys that I've met who, I mean, nowadays they're not even wouldn't even be considered celebrities, but maybe in the heyday they definitely were.
mm,
They're great.
yeah,
Like they're not doing things to just promote themselves.
hmm,
I mean, maybe here and there. I mean, everyone likes to be liked, but um, yeah, I think that whole industry is maybe being run by the A&R guys in the background, and and that's not even maybe a thing anymore. But
What sort of
and
A&R guys?
I don't even know what it stands for.
Oh,
You can delete that. But uh,
well,
the
like by
suits,
record,
basically
yeah,
the
like
suits in the
record
background, they're
labels.
making some money,
Yeah,
right?
record
And
labels.
the artists, at least in the early days, and things do change, and people get jaded, and maybe they start doing things for bad motives. But I think in the early days, like, there was a genuine earnestness to the worship movement, right? And they just wanted to worship Jesus. And and then all of a sudden it became successful, and then it was like, well, this is now a career for me. And oh, by the way, you have to create a new album, and we need 10 more songs or 15 more songs or whatever. And so then there's this pressure to, and this is true really of any artist, right? There's this pressure to just kind of keep pumping up hits.
Yeah.
Um,
But it seems especially key
yeah, it does, because it's worship,
because it's
and
worship.
it's the church should be kind of operating by maybe a different set of rules, or marching to the beat of a different drum, you know.
Yeah.
But you said something, you're like, am I getting old and crusty? And I think, yeah, I feel that, and I think there's always a little bit of that. I remember in the 90s hearing people from the Jesus movement in the 70s saying, yeah, things aren't the same like they used to be.
Yeah.
So there is always that, right?
Yeah.
But
Because things never are the same,
they're not the same, no.
right?
And we
They
don't like
can't be,
change.
and we don't, and yeah,
Yeah.
but we shouldn't at the same time want them to be the same. But yeah. So anyway, carry on.
But I think what I want to talk about is, will I recognize Jesus when he comes, right? And so I think there's always gonna be the Spirit is always moving, and like right here in this church now, there's God's doing stuff. But if I spend too much of my time kind of like pining for the good old days, right, or remembering when things were good, like they were good, I might miss what God's doing right now.
Yeah.
And I think about this video actually that I saw, and it was, do you know who Kevin Prosh is?
I know his name, but I don't think I would recognize his face. I remember seeing some
Messy
of his stuff.
story. Really talented guy. I love his music. Honestly, I I think that his music really made a difference in a lot of people's lives, and it's inspiring. I still listen to it, right? But anyway, there's this video that I watched, and it's Kevin and his band playing at the Toronto Airport Vineyard at the time. They were still a Vineyard church, and they're panning to the people in the audience. People are just like, they're just on their knees, and they're crying, and their hands are raised, and there's like shouting, and there's just manifestations of the Holy Spirit, which
Holy noise.
some people totally discredit. Other people are like, yeah, that was God.
Yeah.
And what they didn't realize was, like, that's the most extreme it ever got. Like, or at least if you were to look at it like a bell curve, they were pretty much at the top of the bell curve for that particular church, for that movement, right? And they were praying for more. They're like, oh God, we just want more. We just want more of you, Lord.
Yeah.
If only you would just come, God, right? If only you just come down, Lord, touch us, make a difference, change our lives, show us your power. And I'm looking around at the audience, and it's like, guys, that's the best it ever got. That's it. You reached it. Those were the good old days. One day you'll look back and it's like, that was it. You were there. You were in the room when it was the best it ever was. And they were asking for more, right? And there's nothing wrong with that. I think it's actually good to have hunger for the touch of God.
Because isn't that what made it good?
Well, and so you can argue that, like, what's the whole point? Like, why are we even doing these things? But that's another topic, I guess. But as far as like manifestations of the Holy Spirit, and signs and wonders, and large groups of people in buildings, going to concerts, like, if that's your metric, right? Then they were at the top, and so let's just pretend like that is, for a second, like that's what God's all about. I know that's not true, but let's
Yeah,
say that's it,
I can
right?
go there.
Let's just
I can
pretend
pretend.
that's all God cares about is filling people into rooms, and having big concerts.
Yes, yes.
Then I don't want to be the guy that's in the room being like, oh, if only God would just come.
Hmm.
I want to be able to recognize it,
Oh, okay.
you know?
Yeah.
And so now I do realize that it's more than that, a lot more than that.
Do you feel like maybe they were missing something of the glory of God by not recognize it in the moment?
I think so. But I think that, like, I mean, right now, you and I are talking, we're making a podcast.
Yeah, we are.
And I don't know who's going to listen to this today, like, or if it's even worth listening to. I don't
No,
know,
I think it's worth something too.
but I realize now, as maybe it's because I'm getting older, but I realize that this is a good moment. These are
Mhm.
special
Mhm.
times that I'm living in,
Mhm.
and I don't know how many more podcasts I'm going to be a part of. And maybe this is the last one I'll
Mm.
ever be a part of,
Mm.
And I want to be grateful,
Yeah.
and recognize how precious moments are,
Hmm.
and recognize the hand of God at work
Yeah.
in my life and in the lives of the people around me,
That's
rather than always longing for that next thing.
yeah.
I'm really good at always longing for that
Yeah.
next thing. I've
Yeah.
spent my whole life there, and it's actually produced a lot of good fruit. But I don't want to always just hang out there. I want to
Yeah, no.
start to practice more gratitude and awareness of
Yeah.
God.
I think that's really profound. I think they say you never know the last time that you and your group of friends when you were teenagers all hung out together. Like,
Yeah.
you never know when the last one is.
Yeah.
And so you never know when the last time your young child will want to hold your hand when they're walking to school.
Yeah.
Those really profound things. And so you're right. Like, you need to be present. And
Mhm.
I think that's a spiritual discipline, is being present and participating in the moment. And, I get on my phone or whatever. I don't want to get sidetracked on that, but like, and in terms of like our moments in our history with God and these worship kind of movements, I think like it's good to recognize them for what they were and
Mhm.
be grateful for them.
Yeah.
Um, and I find I just feel uncomfortable when the goal is to get back
Right.
to something that happened before. And and so I like there was a season in my life where I was so done with conferences because they you go to enough and you get older and I became a pastor and I was a part of church leadership, and so you sort of see how it's all put together
Yeah.
and you can start to see the rhythm and the pattern of it. And um I lost, I guess, a bit of a said, well, is this the point? Um,
Mhm.
to be here and celebrating this moment, because I started looking at that and I started looking at our worship gatherings in and of themselves, going, well, we seem to be putting, and I was a worship pastor, we seem to be putting our eggs in this basket that this is the point. And, so that set me out on a journey of like a little bit of disillusionment and a little bit of cynicism toward gathered worship. And I've come to recognize the rhythm of gathering and going, gathering and sending within the church. Being a part of a denomination like the Pentecostal denomination historically has really like embraced both, like a hugely missional movement, sending missionaries, and also valuing like gathered worship and the expressions of the Spirit. Yeah, I kind of got disillusioned with feeling like a sense that like, oh, there's this real sense of accomplishment if there was a really special time of worship at church.
Yeah.
And I went, you know what? No one cares. The people who care,
Yeah.
it's us. And if
Mhm.
that's what we're doing, if that's what we're on about, I don't care either. And I got really I just as a worship pastor and a pastor, I just started putting less and less value on those encounter kind of things.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because I'm like,
Yeah.
nobody cares about this except for us. And
Yeah.
so if it's just for us, then I mean that's great. I'm not gonna like tell people they shouldn't do it, but this isn't where I'm gonna put my energy or my like expectation or like
Mhm.
sense of satisfaction or so. And I was a worship pastor at the time, so I went through
Yeah.
it was a tough season to go through, but I've grown, to see that we need to have a rhythm of gathering and going and gathered worship, um is a part of a multifaceted what the church is. It's not the only thing, but it is a part of the thing.
Yeah.
So yeah, I still value that and enjoy, and I'm honored to be able to lead people in that.
So has it changed for you now?
Yeah, I feel like in good ways and ways I need to like guard against. Like for one set, in one way, I feel like way more comfortable. I'm not in my head thinking about like, oh, well, like we have to make this moment happen, or we got to do this or do that.
Yeah, less striving.
Yeah, like and stress, and so much anxiety put on it. Like where like you kind of walk off the stage and you feel like there is a sense of vulnerability in bearing your soul, but I don't feel as like fragile anymore when I leave. I feel just like, yeah, we served our church, we worshiped God, and now we're moving on to the next thing. Didn't feel so like grandiose.
Yeah.
In my mind.
Yeah.
Didn't feel like there's so much depending on this.
Yeah.
Like
I would really psych myself up before like leading worship sometimes. Just like sometimes I'd even go for like a run just to like get things going. You know?
Yeah. So what were you?
I took it way too seriously. way too seriously.
So you get up on stage all sweaty and ready to.
Well, not that. No, like, but
what were you trying to achieve? Like, what were you trying?
I think I was trying to achieve. I guess I just wanted to be liked. I mean, maybe it's got to be more than that, because I do genuinely when I lead worship and when I worship, like I really love connecting with God that way. And so it is genuine, but I used to take it really seriously. And I don't as much anymore. And I think part of that, and maybe it's the same for both of us, is we're older and maybe we found our voice. Like we know what we have to offer, and we're kind of like staying in our lane a little bit more. It's like, I'm not going to be this guy over here, and I'm also not going to be this guy. I'm going to be who I've been for the last 25 years. And I've kind of figured out more who that guy is, you know?
I don't know. Yeah, I think that's a big part of it. Because I think for me, the anxiety was like, am I gonna be like, if I play this right, or if I'm obedient, am I gonna be the next big person?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I think most young people probably have those questions,
right?
You know,
if I write, a song that everyone wants to sing, am I gonna become like? And so, like, as a 23-year-old, you have these grandiose, illusions or like hopes, or your imagination goes, right? Because you're trying to figure out what God's plan is for your life, and you have passion and gifting, but that would create a lot of stress. I used to feel like that, like this battle of like, no, I just want to do this, I just want to be faithful, but maybe
maybe today, maybe this Sunday, this is the day, this is where it all begins.
And I wasn't sure what was gonna happen. Like, but there was a culture being built. There was a Christian celebrity culture being built,
for sure.
Yeah, and it was people who just like Matt Redman, who, we were just sitting around writing some songs to Jesus, and now you're like, yeah, well, now you're like traveling the world, like Hillsong. Yeah, we were just a bunch of youth group guys, just playing songs for Jesus. And sorry, that was a British accent, but like, and so you're like, it was a grassroots thing, and so you're like, maybe these are the grassroots so
right. Yeah,
so, I don't know.
But then you're like trying to create the grassroots,
which is the antithesis,
which is
grassroots.
totally the antithesis of it. Yeah. And I don't know, maybe I squandered those years trying to curate them or just like manage them too much, rather than just, once again, like what I was saying earlier, just being grateful for where I am at in the moment,
Yeah.
Also, I don't want to get too stuck in the moment, because then like nothing happens, right?
How do you mean?
Well, I guess, so here's the thing. This is where real faith comes in. This is like, who's in charge? Who's making this thing happen? Is it God?
Like when we're leading worship?
Yeah,
or the church,
or the move of God.
Yeah, okay.
Right?
Yeah.
Like, is it God or is it us? So if I'm truly just in the moment and I'm worshiping God and praying and just connecting and to my best of my ability. You know, I'm not beating myself up too much, trying to, you know, like the prophets of Baal, whipping myself, you know, just
Oh,
like,
man.
come, Lord,
Yeah.
please,
Yeah.
more,
Yeah.
right?
That's a good image. Yeah.
Right. If I'm like in purity of heart, just really connecting with God, then it's up to God if he wants to take it any further and turn it into some movement or make some celebrities out of some people in the room or whatever. Like, that's not the point, but that's on God, you know? Or am I the guy that's kind of like the guy behind the scenes pulling all the strings and
Yeah.
behind the curtain? And I guess it comes down to faith, you know, like, do I really trust God for my future? Or do I trust myself?
Yeah.
Because I know what I can accomplish,
Yeah.
and I'm a fairly capable guy. I can accomplish a decent amount, and I don't need God at all for that. Like,
Yeah.
I can do a lot of stuff without God. In fact, I think a lot of people run churches without the intervention of the Holy Spirit. Just they're talented people, capable people, organized, disciplined. You know, they're not drug addicts, whatever, right? Like, they have the ability to manage things. And
Oh, wait.
and so it is a bit of a leap of faith to just say, God, I trust you for the outcome of this, and I'm just going to be faithful with what I understand of you. I say it like, you know, like I do it, but I rarely do. The honest truth is I'm pretty much in the driver's seat all the time. And once in a while I say, okay, God, now you can take the wheel. You're in charge.
But like that goes to the nature of like the world God created and like his invitation for us to be co-laborers with him, because I'm not really aware of many things that God does without using human beings.
Right.
You know what I mean? So I mean, of course he's speaking. Of course he's God. He holds all things together in ways that we could never even like imagine or touch. But I think part of my journey has been recognizing that just how involved human beings are with the whole project, right?
Yeah.
And not being scared of that, and not being scared of the agency that we've been given as, you know, as human beings to make something of the world. And that it's not unspiritual to do things and make decisions and create. And but of course there's towers of Babel,
right? Yeah.
And then that are like direct opposition to co-laboring with God. But then there are like projects of prayer and projects of like obedience and working in tandem and working in concert with an awareness of God. And I think that's probably what you're talking about, is that awareness or that sense of like, okay, we're going to do something, but God, is this what you want to do? And, I mean, even just with saying that and using that language, it gives me some sort of like weird vibes from back in the day when experiencing like as a young leader and a young pastor, like paralysis because I didn't know what God wanted me to do.
Right.
And so then I just started doing things, and then recognize God isn't going to like smite me from heaven.
Yeah.
And then I started going, I think there's a lot more of this life that's just up to me to do.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point.
You know? Yeah. But so then the job or what I need to pay more attention to from that posture is like, okay, I can't do this without God, you know? Whereas the temptation was, I can't do anything unless God tells me what to do.
Right.
Now moving.
Which like basically never happens.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, that's the thing. Once in a while you have this Damascus Road experience, you know, where, you know, God shows up and smites you basically with some sort of clear audible voice that makes you blind, and then you have to go and get your sight back, and
then that's the story that you hear at the conference.
Yeah.
And then you go home going, well, that's the way it works. So,
yeah.
You know,
and it does work that way, but like one in a million. Yeah. And then for everyone else, we're like down here scraping away, doing our thing.
The unspiritual folks.
Yeah, the unspiritual folks. But I don't think it is that way.
No, it's not.
Honestly, I think that, I mean, like with Thomas, you know, what did Jesus say? Blessed are those who do not see and still believe.
Yep.
Right? Like there's almost like an added blessing or favor, maybe not favor, but an added blessing for people who have been faithful without the miracles and the audible voice and all those kind of things.
Yep. Yeah, I think that's the secret sauce there, which flies in the face of, you know, we kind of come back full circle to monetization and the industry of selling books or selling records or selling tickets to conferences. That it doesn't sell. Faithfulness doesn't really sell. So, I think, we've talked about like not throwing everything out because there's fault in the system or the industry, because there are good people and good hearts and good intentions and good fruit within the system, right? Because I look around at the young adults in our church and the teenagers, and just how passionate and how sincere they are. The worship songwriters and worship movements that they're inspired by, and the songs that they're singing and leading us in as a church. Like, yeah, this is a lot of good stuff.
Yeah.
There may be a whole lot of collateral damage coming out of like Hillsong kind of blew up,
Yeah. But I haven't followed that. I've just heard.
I mean, there's been a lot there.
Yeah.
And it's messy, and hopefully we get better. Like, hopefully the lessons are learned about capitalization of ministry, right? But because I think that is a critique of it all, is that like it's highly capitalistic, right? The demand grows, so we produce more, right?
Yeah.
But even within all of that, as a 44-year-old guy who's working on staff with 24-year-old people who are largely innocent of that, and don't have, those types of perceptions of things. Well, I don't want to be like, what posture do I want to have? And I think I do what I can to call out the BS that I see.
Yeah.
But not just stand by and not do anything good, or say something good about what is good, or encourage purity and sincerity, right? It's too easy to sit back and like point fingers, and then you just make yourself completely irrelevant to the moment, because everyone just writes you off as like grumpy old man.
Yeah.
And you are. That's because that's what you are. And
totally.
You're not offering anything beneficial.
Yeah.
Right. So
I think that when an organization or a movement gets to this certain size, or just grows, I don't want to say too big, but it just grows larger, it starts to look maybe more inward, because it realizes that what it has is unusual. It looks around at all the other things happening around it, and it's like, oh, we're the biggest, greatest, like best thing in town. There must be something extra special about us, right? And so then you start to take what you say and what you do really seriously, and you start to be more cautious with the risks that you take, right? Because you don't want to jeopardize the success of the big.
You're talking about you're talking about the institutionalization
of it, right?
Yeah.
And so, and it's all often really good natured. Like the people in the middle aren't, I don't think they're evil people. They're just like wanting to preserve what they see as good. They're like, oh my gosh, we got like 1 million people who looked at that video, and we just posted it yesterday, And so like, we must be onto something amazing. We got to keep it up.
Yeah.
And so in the spirit of, greasing the wheels and keeping the show going and all this stuff, it loses its authenticity. It loses, there's like its punch, its efficacy, right?
Yeah.
And eventually you just get this like neutered, boring, not even boring, but just like there's no substance to it anymore, and they're just pumping out drivel. Like it's, and that's not always the case. Sometimes they'll go through a season of that and then kind of like find their way again, and then back and forth. And every organization kind of has this ebb and flow of that. But I have always held in high esteem people who can be irreverent, not take themselves too seriously, laugh at themselves, make mistakes and embrace those mistakes as part of their story, and repent from them and make changes, try new things and fail, and then keep trying new things and keep failing and fail and fail and fail and fail over and over again. And then once in a while they'll have something that resembles success. But I just think that it's important to take those risks and not to be too hard on ourselves. And I was actually talking to Dave about it not long ago.
Pastor Dave Funk
of
Abbotsford Pentecostal Assembly.
Yes. And I was just saying how much I value irreverence. And I've said it to a few people, but it's kind of become a theme that I'm exploring more, like with comedy. Not that I'm in comedy, but just like watching comedians and stuff, and even with church and stuff too. And so it's like knowing when to be irreverent and when not to be is very difficult in church. Yeah. Church is like extra hard because you have, it's loaded, comes preloaded with all this like sacredness and holiness. And that is important. And I want to be reverent where it matters and irreverent everywhere else.
I love that.
I'm not an expert in any way.
I know, I really love it. I think I feel like I have the same sort of like, I've never articulated it, but I think there's something really good about it. I remember this moment I had back in this season where I was like stressed about performance and making it or being successful or whatever that meant. And feeling very limited by who I am as a person, right? Because that's always the rub, is you're like, I feel like, and we were primed to be great, dream big, strive for greatness.
You're the generation.
Yeah. Yeah. No, really, like you're going to change the world. And so, I was in that kind of like space of anxiety. I remember I was in the washroom and I was reading a magazine
on the toilet.
I was in the washroom magazine. And there was like this, I don't know, pop music magazine. There was a interview with U2.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
And they're like so cool. Right?
Oh yeah.
Everything about U2 is so cool. And there's, like the photo ops of them and they're on this couch and they've all got cool sunglasses and haircuts.
Yeah.
Anyway, but it dawned on me. They went, all these guys wipe their own bums.
Yes.
Right. And I was like, all these guys have to wipe their butt. And I'm like,
just like you're about to do.
Yeah, just like I was about to do. And something about that it just gave me this sort of like let me off the hook a bit.
Yeah.
Right. And
Bono might be wiping his butt right now.
In some greasy Irish pub.
Somewhere in Ireland.
Or in his, palatial, resort home. Anyway.
Yeah.
But anyway, there was something about that moment, a very irreverent moment. I went, everybody does this. I think there's some posts, like I remember there was a movement where stickers or t-shirts like what says everybody poos.
Yeah.
Right. It was sort of like that. Yeah, you know what? Like these guys, they're these iconic rock stars, but and so that maybe the Holy Spirit was speaking to me, I think probably, but it gave me like the sense of like relief. And so I think that irreverency can do that for people. And I feel like when I am irreverent with people, often they're surprised if they don't know me yet because I'm a pastor.
Right.
And
they expect you to just be serious about everything.
Yeah. And like you say, like there's a reverence that is unhelpful or distracting or profane.
It's a fine line, but it's really hard to know where that line is sometimes. I laugh where I often shouldn't. And then I feel really embarrassed about it. It's like, oh, I shouldn't have laughed at that joke or that situation.
Or out loud.
And then there's other times where I think I take things too seriously and it's also inappropriate in a way. And I miss out on the fun and the kind of, I don't know, the goodness or that God had for me in that moment.
Yeah. Yeah.
But like U2, for example, they are a serious band, right? The sunglasses, the outfits,
or
the message,
for, debt relief around the world.
Yeah.
And photo ops with like Desmond Tutu and Mother Teresa. It's like, okay, they're doing some big things.
What I find interesting is like to draw parallels with the church, I think, and things have changed now because it's not the 90s and 2000s anymore, but the church modeled its worship style after that U2 sound, at least for a long time, right? And it would be interesting to kind of look into the effects of like who your influences are and how that like trickles down into all the other areas of your organization,
Right.
So like my daughter, I got her into the Beatles, right? Yeah. And I like the Beatles. I think they were awesome. Great songwriters, but irreverent, very irreverent. Look at some of the old photos of the Beatles. They're goofing off all the time, just making ridiculous faces in interviews. They didn't take anything seriously. It was like all of life was a joke to them, and it was really entertaining, right? Look at U2, very different. It's just like these guys take themselves serious,
cool
you
as a
know, and they're
cucumber.
both huge bands, you know. So I was trying to explain to my daughter the other day, we were listening to a U2 song. I was like, U2 is a big band. And now, like, my daughter's 15, so like she doesn't know this. She doesn't even know who U2 is, right? And I was trying to explain to her like how famous U2 is as a band. But she already knows the Beatles, right? As kind of dad's music, even though they're, you know, way older than that. But she prefers the irreverence and the fun of the Beatles over the seriousness of U2, right? And I know that's just a style thing, but I think I'm the same. I think I also prefer it, you know? And I would like to bring more of that culture into church, you know, even from the stage, even in a worship set. If I put the capo on the wrong spot on the guitar neck, big deal. You know, like I can stop the song mid-song and change it. I mean, that's maybe a really dumb example, but
no, that's a good example. Because there's a point where like, I mean, when you're doing anything from a stage, you want to minimize distractions, and if you can salvage a missed line or a missed chord, whatever you do for the sake of the thing. But sometimes it's so bad that you're doing a disservice by not acknowledging it and making a laugh about it. Like, and capoing on the wrong fret is one of those moments where
and the whole band is in a different key. But
and you come in and it's like cacophony. And you're like, you have to start over again. I think then I think you need a sense of holy, like I don't even think that's irreverence. I think that's just like there's a more of a positive word for it. Fun, or just not taking yourself too seriously, right? I've had to do that many times. I remember once leading worship at a chapel at the Bible college, and the drummer could not get the beat, and it's worse when it's someone else, because you're like, don't want to like embarrass somebody. But he was playing, it was like a 6/8, and he wasn't playing a 6/8, he was playing a 4/4. And it's like, you can't fake that, right? And but then the trouble was he got stuck in his brain, right? Right. And so I think we restarted the song 2 times.
Ooh, that's like the stuff nightmares are made of. And I often will have dreams about leading worship in situations like that. This is like everyone's watching, you know, and I just can't get the charts right, or the band's off, or I'm off, or whatever.
But that comes back to sincerity, and that comes back to being just yourself before God and your community, and fighting against that the impulse of people to make heroes out of other people, and the impulse of those of us who are, you know, doing something in front of people to make heroes of ourselves, right? And just be like, yeah, that was whatever, you know, good times, folks. We're all friends here. I don't know. I think that's really important for church ministry, because our church cultures lean toward idolatry. Of leaders and of those who stand in front of people.
So then where's the line between being an example, because I also want to be living in a way that inspires others, but that's to follow Jesus.
Isn't that totally different? Like your performance as a worship leader, do you think people conflate that with your following of Jesus?
So I guess people are attracted to power, right? But they're also attracted to authenticity. You know, and there's, I guess, ways to have both. It's maybe not an either or, but sometimes we get so wrapped up in trying to say the most compelling, powerful thing, or play our song in a compelling, powerful way, that we're not authentic anymore. And then other times we're just like, it's just a gong show, and we're just all over the place, but we're very authentic.
So authentic.
But there's no substance anymore, right? And there's nothing to really be inspired by, other than it's just like, well, here's Travis being super authentic and raw. But at some point I don't want to just be like all about like telling people, you know, about my experience on the toilet, you know, reading a magazine, you know, about U2 or something on a Sunday morning. I don't know why I'm using your example, but
so maybe
but so I guess I'm trying to get at, like, where is the balance or the line between being an inspiration to people and being very human and authentic and ordinary, you know?
Yeah, I For me, I'm so cautious of like that lure toward heroism.
Yeah.
And it just goes against the grain of my personality. So maybe it's easier for me not to worry about it. Because I have to work on more being like, no, I should like think about putting myself out there as an example. Because I'm more like, I'm I'm good. Like I'm just gonna do my thing over here.
Yeah.
But I should probably be standing up to be more of a leader, you know. And I think we all have different like impulses that we need to like be true to, but at the same time also be wary of. But so anyway, for that question that you're asking of like being an inspiration versus being a real person who's got flaws, I think that just takes wisdom, because I think there's stories pastors tell on themselves that are really unhelpful for their credibility.
Yeah.
Right. And you're like, that's a lesson that you should learn privately. You know, it's not helping you as a leader. Right.
Yeah.
If
I think you've said it better than I did, but that's exactly it, where people are almost sharing too much. And it's like, okay, this isn't helpful anymore.
Yeah. You're cutting your own legs out from under you.
But I don't ever want to be, I want authenticity to be a big part of my life. Like I'm the happiest when I'm not trying to be someone else.
Yeah.
You know,
I think it's recognizing that, yeah, of course, everybody who stands up in front of a microphone has thought and done really stupid things that don't make them someone that you want to follow.
For sure.
So everybody, that's everyone.
Yeah.
So you don't need to broadcast the specifics of it.
Right.
Necessarily.
Yeah.
You can selectively like be like self-deprecating, and that can help prove a point, and that can help give you like, you know, help people relate to you. But I don't think it's necessary to be like, no, really, guys, like I had some really bad thoughts before church today. You know,
let me list them.
Like, who is that helping? You know,
yeah, exactly.
I think,
oh, I'm having a bad thought right now. yeah.
Yeah. So I think like, yeah, there's no need to like put a microscope under your humanity in a way that's like, what's the point? Like, why do that? Like, it's not, it just maybe it speaks to your own lack of wisdom or insecurity, or I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, while we're on this topic,
Yeah.
can I ask you what like your most embarrassing worship leading story is? If you want to share.
Yeah. Well, I don't embarrass that easy because I don't take myself very seriously sometimes. So I was leading worship for a Bible college graduation, and I worked at the college. I wasn't a student. And it was a capable scenario. We were doing Christ Alone Cornerstone.
Yeah.
So the piano came in, and then I had set my capo a fret off. And I think instead of coming in on a big C chord, I came in on a big B flat chord.
Oh,
it was like, and I was like, and so that was
semitone
kind of embarrassing.
Down, the worst.
Yeah, yeah, half a tone. But whatever. You just kind of, it wasn't just me; it was like a whole band. So you know, yeah, you contributed to a bad sound, but I don't know, other embarrassing ones. Well, I came up on stage at CLCC, one of my other churches. The pastor would always close in prayer, and that was our cue to come back up, and then we'd do a final closing song. And it was going to be a shorter service because we were going to do an outside baptism that day. And he had preached for not very long, but then he went into his prayer. I was like, well, I guess he's doing a really short sermon. But what had happened was his intro was just really long. He was actually opening in prayer, and I brought the whole worship team up. And
like, come on, guys, come on.
And we're all up there and putting our instruments on, and the pastor went, "Oh, you guys can sit down." And just, this isn't the end of the sermon. Again, it's not that embarrassing because it's just like your community church. Do you have any good ones?
Yeah, actually, I do have one.
Like truly embarrassing?
Oh, yeah, it was embarrassing for sure. So I usually sit when I lead from piano, just because I'm so tall.
Sorry, I thought you were going to tell another bathroom story there.
No. So I usually sit when I'm like on a piano bench, right? And it's just weird because I'm 6'5". So if I had like a piano stand and I was standing, it would be like way up just to get that kind of right angle, you know?
Yeah.
And it often makes it like this big teeter-totter thing. So Anyway, I learned early on, like, I'm just going to set the piano down like a normal, or a keyboard down like a normal piano, and play sitting. So I had this piano bench. It was like one of these X-frame piano benches.
Mhm.
And it has these little retractable pins that go into these holes, and there's a spring in there. And so I had set the height, and I was happy with it, and I was playing the piano, I was leading. It was some passionate moment of the song, and like it was just getting to this like feverishly, excited moment, right? And I was getting into it. The piano's rocking back and forth, right? And I'm moving my body back and forth on this bench, right? And I guess what had happened is those pins that were inside the holes were slowly working their way out, right? So it got closer and closer and closer until the point where, like we're right in the middle of this chorus and everyone's worshiping. And then I just fall flat on my butt, like on the stage with a huge thud, right? It just comes down, straight down, bam, right? And everyone's just like, what just happened? So
that's funny.
That was pretty embarrassing.
Yeah.
But I recovered.
Yeah.
My tailbone.
I looked back once and the drummer behind me had fallen straight onto his back. It was like the intro song. He was elderly and he was actually on oxygen. Oh. It was a small church. Yeah. It was a small campus. Yeah. And it was a ragtag group. And there was like a older man. And one morning he came in with air. Yeah. With air tubes. I'm like, okay. So we would do a Happy Day, and yes. he would get out of breath. I'm like, so anyway, we did it. And it was like,
happy.
Yeah.
Okay.
Greatest days. It was pretty fast, right? Anyway.
Yeah.
It was a little too fast for him. Because he totally he fell backwards and landed on his back. So I didn't know. And I'm like, all right, it was just like the opening song. Hey, why don't you turn and say hi to somebody? And I turn around to look at the band and he's just he's sprawled out, like starfished. And I'm like, oh my gosh, are you okay? We're helping him up. And he's like, oh yeah, I'm okay. And so then we had to get another drummer in, but he was left-handed. So we had to switch the drum kit around and we carried on. I don't even think some people noticed, but
it's amazing what people miss. So, I think to myself, oh my gosh, that was a huge flub. Everyone noticed. Nobody noticed.
Nobody's even.
It's like no one's paying attention.
That's another good reason why worship leaders shouldn't take themselves too seriously.
Oh yeah. It doesn't matter.
That's a good place to end it. In the end,
nothing matters.
Yeah, sounds like a Linkin Park song.
No.
Cool, man. Well, thanks for coming in and chatting today.
Yeah,
it
was fun.
A lot of good. Covered a lot of good ground.
Yeah, I think we did. And I think I would want to end with rather than what I just said, with nothing matters. May God grant us the wisdom to know when it does matter and when it doesn't.
That's it. That's good. That's a good point to end on.
Thanks, Chad.
Thanks, man. That's good.